it's that focus on one thing that you're great at. If your thing will be to be the best guitar player, be that only. That's my suggestion. That's what worked for me.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Behind the Mix. I go by the name of Keyz, and on this episode, we have an amazing gentleman who for a long time, I was a big fan of the music. I was a big fan of the mixes that I was hearing, and I never put a face to the name. And then when I put the face to the name, it changed a lot for me. And then I so happened to be in the same group with this gentleman right here. He's the engineer. He's worked with probably your favorite artist that you ever listened to: Jay-Z, Pitbull, Snoop Dogg, Kanye West, Dave East, Rick Ross, Tory Lanez. I can go on and on and on. The list is never ending. I bring to the stage none other than IRKO.
What's going on, Keys?
Man,
let's do it.
Man, thank you for doing this again. I can't thank you enough. And like I said, I was a big fan of your music. And when I first started becoming an engineer, I started listening to a lot of the music and the records that you kind of worked on. And I didn't even know it was you, and just trying to be a student of what I'm listening to just enhance my engineering skills, to enhance, what I was actually doing and what I was listening to. You have been a prime example, and I just geeked out when I found out it was you and we were in the same room, the same mastermind together. So thank you. So first off, before, I know I gave a little intro, but I can't tell it like you can tell it. So can you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do?
For sure. My name is IRKO. I am the music industry most beloved bow tie wearing mixing engineer. I think that music that has not been engineered properly is unethical. And for that, I made it my business for the last 20 plus years to correct that and to make sure that my clients walk away into the wild with the best sounding music ever. And for that, I get the plaques.
So, yes, and he has a lot of plaques. So my question to you then is this: being an engineer, we're given the job that the producer, the artist, everyone kind of delivers these pieces of a puzzle in your hands, and we're given the task to make it fit together and then have it set to some standard which we would consider good, or we would consider this is a good sounding song. So in your own words, what is a good sounding song? Because it's our job to take the song there, but how do we know where there is? Like, how do you know that you arrived to a good sounding song? So what is a good sounding song in your words?
That's beautifully said. So there's a bunch of different things, and there are some things that are not up to taste. Some others are completely up to taste. So it's hard to say a real list of things that are undisputable and very absorbable, because a lot of things are personal taste. However, that being said, the number one thing that's most likely unquestionable is that whenever our song that we're working on is being played after another one, say like in a DJ set or at a radio show or something, our song needs to be able to compete with the previous one. We don't want to go from something that's like super powerful to something that sounds like a little, a flute,
Yeah.
We don't want to have that drop. Anybody that has any kind of experience in DJing or playlisting knows that energy going from one track to the other is very, very important. So if you want to compete with this or that artist that's on the charts or not or whatever, there are some things that we want to make sure that we keep in mind while mixing to ensure that energy content is being respected and we're competitive. So that will be one indication that our mix is a good mix. We want to be able to be competitive and compatible with our references. Okay. Another one would be that whatever we experience on different playbacks will be, of course, determined by the playback itself. In other words, if we have very big speakers, we're going to have a lot of bass naturally. There's more air that's being moved by the woofers, right? So we're going to have more bass. So going from big speakers to small speakers, the presentation of the song will be substantially different. However, we want to kind of try to ensure that the experience is not going to be so much drastically different that only on this kind of speaker the mix will work. Now, this, of course, is a very, I'm opening a can of worms because, again, because there is no set standard for speakers, how can we do this? Well, we got to make sure that we have some sort of guideline of a balance between the major components of the mix, say, for example, vocal to the music ratio, or maybe mids to the low end ratio. Those kind of things should be somewhat respected in a way that it's industry standard, although I hate that term because there is no such thing. There is no standard, right? We just want to make sure that the experience of our fans is going to be curated as much as possible so that whatever speakers they use, even if they use these little guys here, it's still somewhat decent. So that's another indicator that our mix is sitting right. I guess the last thing that I would say is if the engineering, so the technical part of the mix or of the music production kind of goes hand in hand with the message that's being said, right? So if there's like a big part of the chorus, for example, right? Typically that's where it would be. We want to make sure that the engineering supports that rise in energy that the music is intending, right? Or the songwriting is intending. So again, this is another one of those things that you don't really see or pay attention to, or of course, I don't want the fans to even know about this. But if we get the two things work together, we have the best presentation of the song that's being recorded, produced, and written, and sung and everything.
Well, so would you always recommend that someone uses a reference track while mixing? Because I know a bunch of people who don't use reference tracks at all or won't compare their song to anyone else. They'll just go in with what the client wants. The client wants their song to sound this certain way, so therefore I'll just try to achieve that goal without actually referencing anything else. Is that still a good practice, or would you recommend that someone always have a reference while mixing?
I would say always use a reference, and I always will say not to copy the reference, but just to kind of have a frame of reference, like a point of saying, okay, this is where this song or the bass or whatever, this is our true north, that is going to point us in the right direction to know where everything else is sitting while this is playing on the radio or on the charts, right? I think it's very important because it gives you a stepping stone onto which you can base your work on, and that goes for, there are some expectations from fans or clients of a lot of things. We most likely will expect some sort of black screen intro thing on a movie, right? Does it have to be that way? No, it could be purple, but for the most part, it's been like that for years. And usually there's a reason why that is. It's because it's possibly the best way to work it, right? Same thing goes with music. Most likely a typical pop record is around 3 minutes or less, right? So another frame of reference here for production specifically will be, well, if our song is 6 minutes 42, we should probably look into why that is, or maybe do different kind of versions,
Right.
Or in the case of mixing, if our 808 only reaches at the deepest note, say 70 hertz, well, that's probably not the right placement for the 808. We should be looking into moving an octave lower so that we can feel that sub frequency range that we're now lacking. Of course, these are all examples that are kind of like that I'm coming up with, but that kind of applies on so many different levels. And again, the references are not to copy anything. It's just to get the true north.
So let me ask you this. how you worked with a substantial amount of great musicians and artists and producers, um and you are, and I'm pretty sure, you know, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the majority of your clients probably are in that ballpark of great musicians, artists, and producers. My question is, uh how do you become a household name? Like, how do you become that guy that everybody calls on, and they know to call you? You know, I want IRKO. That's who I want on this song. How do you get to that point to where your kind of reputation precedes yourself?
Yeah. The best commercial for any business is a happy client. And for
Hmm.
that, you need to think about it as the snowball effect, where you start with a little thingy and then it gets bigger and bigger and it grows and grows and grows, right? That's how it happens for the most part. Anytime I mix a song, I'm never, or I shouldn't say never, but most of the times I'm working with a number of people. It's not just one person that I'm talking to. However, again, most of the times I'm called in by one person. So you see, the second I kill this mix, the other three people that are involved in this record are gonna notice, and the next time they need something mixed, they most likely will call whoever they had the best experience with last. So that's how, work with one song. There's four people that at least one of them is new, and that person most likely has different projects, and that goes to another person where I'm stepping now into a new room with another three, another set of three people. And so that's how it kind of keeps going. And of course, years of working, um, generate even more of this trajectory as a, logarithmic kind of trajectory, so it's a lot more later. And then the other thing too is usually you grow with your clients also. So the projects that I would do 15 years ago were substantially smaller than what I do today, right? But the same people that I used to work with 15 years ago now are grown and are more established, and so they have their hands in bigger projects. Naturally we're kind of all growing together.
Well, so so to somebody starting out, just starting out, how do they get to a how do they become an engineer? So not just someone who, um and I'm trying to use my words carefully so that I can actually describe this, to someone who really wants to become an engineer. So not someone who just, you know, has a DAW, for example, and just does creates music or tries to just make it sound good. What do you think is the step in between you being someone dibbling and dabbling in making music for fun and actually becoming an engineer? Like, what is in between there? What things need to take place for someone to actually do so?
Hmm. What has worked for me was that I started with a huge passion of music, period. Whatever that meant, I was in it. I was the guy with the little car with the two 12s in the trunk kind of thing, that kind of thing. Then I was the guy with the turntables learning how to blend and, do remixes and DJ and things like that, right? Then I was the guy playing around with software to make music like you would on a sampler, like on an MPC. All these things you see are kind of like a little different aspects of the same kind of concept, but it is gravitating around the same thing, which is making the music, right? Eventually, over the years, discovering myself, I also discovered that I was great at one of these aspects, which was the audio engineering. Not only I was great at it, but I also had a lot more passion for that than I had for saying going to the club and DJ. So eventually, I just kind of stopped doing a lot of other things, music related, that I would not particularly care for that much. And so I narrowed my attention to a very, very tiny piece of the whole pie at the time, which was engineering. That being said, engineering, there's a lot of stuff in there too. Like, recording for a radio show is audio engineering also, or doing live shows. That's engineering also. So at that point, I started to kind of discover this whole new universe of audio engineering that has so many different aspects. And I just kind of narrowed it down and down and down and further and further and further until nowadays where I basically only mix. And being very, very highly specified into what I do and being very, very niche oriented allow me to become very good at it because, of course, I have all the hours, right? Now I don't have to cut records at the club. I can only do this. Now I don't have to tune vocals for this and that artist because I'm only mixing. And so obviously, the more attention, the more energy I put into that one task, the better I become at it. And when that's the case, word gets around and you're being seeked for that particular thing. So the typical example that I say is this: when you're in a smaller market and you're trying to be a producer engineer kind of situation, you may make the beats, you may also record your client that comes in, you also may mix the person, and they walk away with an entire production that you have fully produced from the beginning to the end, right? That's perfect and that's fine. That is not my business model because my best friends in the music business are the producers. So it would be silly for me to offer the same service that John over here is doing when he's bringing me the clients. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So we are creating this perfect marriage, this perfect duality of the producer trusts my abilities because they know that I deliver the best quality for their work, and therefore they gain out of that, right? So they have all the interest to bring me into a situation, into a scenario, right? And so same goes with me. If I have a client that's we're at mix 3 of an entire album and he's still looking for tracks, see, easily I can make the connection and make that happen. So it becomes a duality where we both benefit from one another with our own different lines of work that eventually get combined into one. It's kind of like a technician or the guy that's building the engine at a racetrack and the driver. We both are needed and we both have different services. And I say it's just a different business model. So when you're in a smaller market, of course, it's more beneficial to do everything because you need to be able to work with the clientele that's local to you. So of course, when I was in a smaller market, I was doing everything, right? Now being in Los Angeles and doing a bigger profile work, of course, I'm a lot more specified. So maybe that's what it is. It's a matter of understanding the general field that you're interested in, and then eventually narrow down to what you're actually interested in, and then from there things develop, and that's the case for so many successful businesses and entrepreneurs or CEOs or whatever. And even to this day, anytime I see a Ferrari on the street, I think of Enzo. I read his biography. He was all about engines. Yeah. He cared about nothing else. It was only about engines, right? And because he mastered that, of course, still 100 years later, people are sporting Ferraris because of the engines. It's that focus on one thing that you're great at. If your thing will be to be the best guitar player, be that only. That's my suggestion. That's what worked for me.
So after watching 1,000 hours of every videos that you put up and videos that others have put up on you, I see how you interact in the studio when you had to record, and you were interacting with a lot of producers and a lot of artists. And one of the techniques, specifically that I saw you do that I really haven't seen any engineer kind of do is like do a mic shootout for that song. So I see people do mic shootouts all the time, but not when they're actually ready to record. So you actually take time to figure out which microphone and which line actually works best for you. What made you do that and not necessarily say, oh, well, I'm gonna just go with the Sony, or I'm gonna just, go with the Neumann or the Telefunken today? Like, what made you actually like shoot out, microphones before you record like a specific song?
There's a proper way to do shootouts. And again, that's not my opinion, it's just science. The proper way to do a shootout is to record the singer, not to do one line on this mic, and then another line on this mic, another line on that mic. You need to record the same source at the same time, and then be able to listen to them back at the same time. Or well,
Right.
alternating from one to the other. But it is the same take because our ears are very very easy to get tricked, and the fact that for whatever reason maybe someone steps a little closer to the mic on this mic rather than that, it will change how the perception of the mic is, and we would think that it's the mic that is better or worse. That's not the case. The same can be said about doing a blind shootout on Wednesday with singer A and then go to the studio next week and have singer B thinking, well, with singer A last week, that mic was better. So I'm going to use that mic for singer B today.
Right.
That's not how it works. It's not how it works. There's so many different variables, and it's though there are usual suspects in the microphone in any recording chain, really preamps, compressors, and microphones. It's true, but there's so many variables and so many different pairing of all these components, including obviously the most important one, which is the singer, which is kind of silly. You need to do it on the spot while you're about to record to test the actual part that you're going to record. So I have a thing for these shootouts that you would see online where they're just trying one line here, one line there, one line there. That's not how you do it. It's not an actual test. You're not comparing two same things. You're adding variables. And so that's my thinking. When I'm ready to record an actual vocal, it takes really no effort to put up 2 or 3 mics. Well, it takes some effort, but it's not that crazy considering the outcome. And also the ability of having within the same setup, the same mic tree, you can have different flavors. You may have a ribbon mic or a tube mic, and which is what I very often do. I will choose my first mic, my A mic for the parts, the lead vocals usually, and then my second selection, which most likely is a different technology. That's why I very often pair these tube mics with ribbons or phantom power without or not, these kind of different flavors, because when I put the doubles together with the leads, when they have been recorded through different mic chain recording chains, we have 2 different textures that are now being paired. So it's such a great thing to do that doesn't really take that much effort, and it allows me to start the mix whenever I'm ready with already different fabrics in my hand without me needing to reach for an EQ or saturation or whatever. Imagine this: if the lead vocal is recorded with the best recording chain that I have, and it's nice in the middle, nice compressed, and everything is nice. Now I have not so nice at all background vocals without the high end that sound like this, right? And also we have dynamic behavior in a recording chain that's different from the lead vocal. So if I double those, I already have one thing and a completely different panorama for the stereo doubles, right? That's amazing. That takes really not that much effort, and it gives us so much more to play with at mixing. So
I
that's the
can
thing.
definitely tell you are somebody who believes that getting the sound right at the source. I can. You're not someone who everything that I've seen did too much surgical things after the fact. More so you have enhanced songs
Yeah.
because you took the time to actually get the sound that you want right at the source. So let me ask you
Yes.
this for so let's not talk to the engineers for a second because I work with a lot of artists. What advice have you seen throughout the years? If you had like one piece of advice from working with the many of artists that you work with from small to large, what kind of was the one lesson you learned or the one key takeaway that you think all artists should know or should apply to their music?
Yeah. There's a couple. The first one is a general philosophical one, and that is everything that's been written, recorded, tuned, whatever, will be contained in this vessel. That's the mix. That's the audio engineering of it, right? So again, even if we want it to disappear and not be perceivable, and your fans shouldn't even know about it, or yeah, even consider it, it's very important because that's how you convey this meal that you prepare to your audience. It's very very important. So do definitely not discount the audio engineering. And obviously that's coming from an audio engineer. So it may sound like a pitch, but that doesn't, it's not even to get my services. This applies to everyone, you know, and they don't have to hire me. They should though get somebody that's aware of that, because you know, it's important. It's like the crib for a baby. You know, you want to make sure that the baby is comfortable and it's delivered safely. You know, that's very important. The second thing would be about the entire writing, composing, production, you know, sound choices, all of these things. Make decisions. So a lot of times I get these files from the producer or the artist, and there's like 5 different guitar parts. Yes, we can use unlimited tracks nowadays, which is, I guess, great. But that means that when you're doing 4 guitar parts, or you know, 3 different synths do this a similar thing, we're just overproducing everything. We're overlayering. When you have one lead vocal and you know 4 different stacks and doubles and harmonies that say different words underneath, it's too much. So there needs to be some sort of selection and decision making that goes through and through every single step of the way, and that allows the composition to be thinned out and a lot more concise and thought of. In other words, what I'm trying to say is, instead of having 50 ingredients that eventually the mixing engineer will inherit, and believe it, he or she are gonna kill it, because the only way to allow 4 guitar parts is to kill 3 and let 1 go, and then the next bar kill the other 3 and let 1 go, and so forth, right? So making the decisions at the right step of the production outcomes gives so much better results that than to just have the engineer at the very end make the decisions.
Wow, that's actually pretty astounding to me. I work with a lot of, you know, the urban music, a lot of R&B, a lot of soulful type of music, and you'll get a lot of singers and they'll do backgrounds, and they'll like map out the chords that are being played with their voices, and then they'll do, you know, another kind of like progression, you know, with their voices as well, and all of it stacked, you know, two for every voice. So like 2 for every soprano, alto, tenor on the regular progression. And then you have them stacked the same exact way again for the other progression that's taking place at the same time. So, and what you're saying is that you would rather for a song to be like just have the parts taken care of, and then that's it. You know, don't overstack it, and don't try to do too much. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, audio is finite. We have 20 to 20,000 hertz at best, and 2 channels left and right. That's really all we got. So the moment we add more ingredients to this pot, everything else starts to get thinner and smaller, and harder to be perceived by the audience. So why bother? You know, it's a lot better to say, okay, we're going to have this line, and that's going to be the big thing. And even imagine this, right? If you're putting 100 tracks on the record, that means, you know, say it takes you 100 minutes to produce the record. 1 minute it goes to every track, right? But there's 100 tracks. So once they're all put together, they have each 100th of the space and attention of the audience. So why even waste that minute for something that will be perceived 1%? It's silly, right? It's so much better to dedicate those 100 minutes for the production of this record to 4 ingredients, 25 minutes each, and now you're having so much more energy, detail, attention, and choices, and the parts will be a lot better, and you're actually working on things that will be actually heard. So wow. It's I know it's a little counterintuitive.
So I guess the thinking is, because even me as a recording engineer, even sometimes they'll ask me, and I'll be like, oh, you know what, maybe we should stack that, or it's that type of my. So how because I think the idea, the mindset, what you're pushing forward is like less is more, in a sense. And I remember in a video you had said people want these big sounds or these big drums or a big sound, and then you need to have less going on or less instruments.
Yep.
If you want for one thing to be big. So let me ask this: instead of stacking, how would you, or doing a whole bunch in a song, even if it's guitars layering, you six to the left and six to the right, how would you make that instrument big then? You say it all, of course it would be a lot of attention would be on it because there would be less distraction, but how do you actually make that part big?
Yeah, the easiest way to make the kick drum sound huge is to mute the bass, right? And so it's the same thing. You gotta, if you want to highlight something, if you want the biggest vocal in the mix, kill the music. It will be the biggest vocal ever. Now, of course, I'm exaggerating here,
Yeah.
but that's the thinking. Anytime you add more, everything else will have to come down. There's no way around that. That's just physics. That's how it works. Imagine this, right? We imagine the mix to be like the trunk of your car. The trunk is finite. That is it. You cannot enlarge the trunk. That's how it is. So the second you put a watermelon in there, a lot of space is gone. Now you put a spare tire, most of the space is gone. And then only then you can start filling up with smaller things like books or the milk, right?
Wow,
And
yeah.
then only after that you can start with filling up things the size of a pencil. And only then you can start with sand, So you got to fit the big things first, and then you can go progressively with smaller items. And so yeah, if you want to add 4 watermelons, there's going to be no space for the spare tire. That's just how it works. So
Wow.
I was mixing last week something that had 4 or maybe more than 4 bass tracks on the production. Now what am I going to do?
Peace.
Like, already one bass is too much, not too much, but you know what I mean? Like, it's going to take everything under whatever frequency the bass is.
Right.
So what do? I had to start, I sent them the little, a little breakdance emoji thing on the text, like, hey, I'm doing all kinds of breakdancing here to make these bass work. And I did. Eventually, it did work, but yeesh.
Yeah. So I mean that was a very good example. And I know for me, when dealing with center neutral items, kind of, the bass, the 808, the kick drum, those type of items, I kind of don't do too much going on there. Whatever's there, that was supposed to be there. You know how big it is, because of where it sits and how much isn't around it. But typically when we're start to move up, especially in the 3K range where everything kind of like builds up right there, that's kind of like the area where especially singers or guitar players, and you get a whole bunch of pianos, or you get a piano and a Rhodes and an organ, those type of things. So that's actually really interesting, and you're actually challenging me now with my mixes going forward, to kind of trim down and do less and stuff. So I have a question for you. So my question is this: is you worked with a lot of people. How often have you ever had to reach out to somebody for work, or have you always been recommended? Have you had to check in with somebody and be like, hey, I know you said that you had an album for me to mix, and I'm just making sure you still have that album, or was your number always the number that was called?
Nowadays I'm extremely passive. I could not be more passive than this. I will reply to everybody that reaches out for sure, but I do not reach out to anyone at all. But that's probably me being lazy at this point. But this was different back then, back in the, MySpace era, or those kind of days. I would absolutely reach out to people and try to get in contact. And yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow, wow. So then my next question, and we're almost done. We're about to wrap up soon.
All right, all right.
My next question for you is, how is the studio coming? Can you kind of tell everybody, what you have going on and how you want to look, what stage you're in, and everything like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going great, man. It's something that I have not shared on the video series that you should definitely check out. I put out a video every Wednesday about the development of the studio construction and everything, so definitely check that out. But the one thing that I did not share on the videos is how long this thing has been going on. Well, first of all, I had the idea of having my own shop at some point when I first came to America, obviously, right? But moving around and freelancing around major recording studios everywhere has been great, and I've loved it, and I still do. That being said, I knew at some point I was gonna open my own spot, and it was about 5 years ago that I finally found this place. So imagine this: only to get the team together, the acoustician, the architects, and then once the drawings started to be, more or less the final ones, getting the permits for construction and everything else, that took 4 years. That's a long, long process.
Wow.
So, and I say that to say that compared to the first, I guess, portion of this build, which was, the short time in which I put together the team and then we started with the drawings, then there was like a gap of a couple of years of no real action, because, when you got to go through the city to get permits and things like that, you're dealing with the government. So there's really no updates. There is no website where you can go and see your status or whatever, right? There's none of that. So there was zero action then, until we started the actual construction, which was about maybe 7-8 months at this point, 7-8 months ago at this point. So even though it's still a slow process, we're looking at another maybe 6 or 7 months for the thing to be done. But compared to the first 4 years of no news whatsoever, this is like, I'll take this anytime, any day,
Well, most certainly, when you're done with the studio, let me know. I'm flying out there, and I'm coming with gifts, coming with bow
But
ties.
let's do it. Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So as far as the actual development of the studio, we're about halfway, more or less. So the outside shell is fully finished. It has been fully finished for a while now, and we are getting ready to start and doing the interior construction. And so yeah, definitely, I'm sure you're gonna put a link or something somewhere here.
Yep.
So go to the links and see
Yep.
the latest updates. And yeah, definitely tune in every week, every Wednesday.
So, okay. So, besides the studio, what other things are you working on right now? Are you currently, still, and you said that, you still travel to commercial studios still, but what are you kind of working on now regarding the studio? Or is it just the studio, or do you have any other musical plans, or do you have an artist that you always wanted to work with, you finally got a chance to work with? And I know probably on that list is, I don't know who that could be, but what
All
other
of
thing
them.
what other things do you have going on now?
Yeah. Well, the time is very limited, with mixing 200 records every year, plus following, a construction site of a building with 2 stories, 2 studios, and 2 apartments has been taxing for me. I'm pretty much spent with that. Instead, just last week, the soundtrack of Judas and Black Messiah just came out, and I mixed track 4 on that record. So I'm very excited about that one. I
Track
haven't seen the
4.
movie yet.
Hold
I
on,
can't
I gotta
check
write
it.
that down.
Yeah. The record is called Welcome to America. It's amazing, and I can't wait to. I hope it's in the movie. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet.
That's what's up. 200 records, the studio, and of course, if y'all haven't seen any of his videos, the apartments and stuff that are going to be with the studio as well, for musicians and artists to come stay at when you come record at his studio, which is going to be dope. So I'm really going to come out there. I'm really want to support you. Hey, IRKO, I thank you so much for joining me here today on Behind the Mix. Can you let everybody know if they wanted to find you, contact you, or find out more about you, or if I guess if they can afford you to mix a song, where would they go to find you?
For sure. You can find me online everywhere at IRKO Studio Beat. That's everywhere: Instagram, YouTube, everything else. And then my website, irko.it.
IRKO.it. All right. Every link that he said, every single thing that he said is going to be in the description below. Please, if you do like this video, please like, subscribe, comment below. Also, if you stayed this far in the actual video, I'm giving away 2 AKG 175s studio headphones for anybody. The link is in the description below. It takes nothing to sign up and to join. If this is March 1st, 2021, I'm sorry, you're too late, but it's until February 28th. But if you want to, you can click the link to win that as well. IRKO, once again, I say thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.
Keep Keyz for president. My man, thank you.